We don't have empirical evidence to back up a lot of these atrocities that happen to marginalized people. So what do we rely on? We rely on anecdotes. Been uncovered by, I think it's the New Yorker, that Hasan Minhaj, who is a stand-up comedian and host of the Patriot Act, which was a show that used to exist, has been embellishing some of his stories. Yeah. So when I first saw this, I was like, maybe no big deal. And then I read the stories that were embellished. One of them that stuck out to me was about him receiving an envelope, a white powder being in it, the white powder landing on his child, his daughter, them rushing the daughter to the hospital thinking it was probably anthrax. They found out it was not anthrax, but really, it turned out none of that had happened. Yeah. And he justifies this by saying he's a comedian, they embellish, and all of it is in order to draw attention to an absolute truth. And the truth is that Islamophobia does exist. He's a brown Muslim, and also there are definitely attacks on brown folks all the time. For sure. How do you feel about embellishment? Whoopi Goldberg backs him up, says we're comedians, this is what we do, we make up stories. Sometimes there's a wider message, sometimes there isn't, but this is what we do, this is our craft. Rizwan, do you have thoughts?
Oh, I have lots of thoughts. And, for me, Tracy, I think, like you said, there's embedded racism. Not just Islamophobia, there's just embedded racism, period, right? So it's not that this necessarily happened to him, but it's probably happened to someone, right? Within his community and within so he's taken elements of it and said, I think what's not necessarily appropriate to say this has happened to me. You can say, there are people out there sending envelopes of anthrax and their kids are getting injured or hurt or whatever. That's one thing. But when you say my child had this white powder land on her and we took her to the hospital, that to me is wrong, right? I understand taking think of a photograph. I take a picture, I edit it, and then I put it up. Now, that's fake, but it's the essence of me is still there, right? The foundation of my face is still there. Well, it's really tweaked, but the essence of Rizwan is still there. Yeah. But you can't go out there and say, my child was hospitalized. Also, as a father, who says that about their own kid? That to me is crossing a line. I don't have children, but I wouldn't even say that about my dog.
Yeah, I do have children, and when I'm bringing my children into any conversation, whether I like to have fun, I like to poke fun as well. I really, my kids are really important, first and foremost. Trust is really important. So if I'm trying to spread a message to take away from racism, then you want to trust the message that's out there. Super important to me. So comedians, they embellish. Yes, there's a right way to embellish and a wrong way to embellish. Yeah. This was definitely the wrong way to embellish, and adding your child into this at the same token, I just think it was a wrong approach, and now he's retracting. He's did it, and now he's oh.
Well, that's what he's saying. It's 70% is accurate, and then the other 30% I made up. And sure, make it up, but you don't have to necessarily say that this happened to me. If you're adding in context and details to the point where you're talking with adding that much grit to it, it has to be somewhat accurate.
I'm just going to throw in that he actually is kind of doubling down and not backpedaling. He's saying, this is what I do, and it's fine, and I'm showing a wider truth, and that's okay. Yeah. But what I will say is when it comes to things like racism, Islamophobia, even what's happening with Indigenous folks in our country right now, we don't have empirical evidence to back up a lot of these atrocities that happen to marginalized people. So what do we rely on? We rely on anecdotes.
Yes.
If you're doctoring the anecdotes, what are we putting our trust in anymore? And I think that it's a major disservice to folks who maybe have had anthrax show up in their house. I think that anecdotes actually count, and if you're going to say that you were trying to fulfill a wider job of trying to bring eyeballs to the fact that there is racism and discrimination, be real about that. That's not the time to make stuff up if you actually want to get people on board. That is it. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thanks.